Hey guys, this is ReadyOpGo, the Worldwide Duelist, and today I'm bringing you a special deck list video. This is the first place deck from the Los Angeles Regional that took place on September 19th and September 20th, and this is the first place hero deck from that event. And yes, I did say hero deck. I am not trying to ruse you, I'm not trying to fool you in any fashion. This is the actual deck that took first. It's surprising that this is the particular deck that took first in a day and age where heroes aren't even necessarily tiered. If you take a generalized understanding of how the tier list works, they don't account for a very large percentage of the tops in events because it's a purely anti-meta deck. Mostly anti-meta deck. Not necessarily purely, but a mostly anti-meta deck, which has a lot of counters to it. But Masked Hero Darklaw is still and remains a really, really good card. One-sided Macrocosmos, as well as being able to punish your opponent's searches while doing searching yourself with Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, is really, really good. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the deck list. Full disclosure for you guys, this video is obviously not scripted. This is basically my first time looking at the deck list outside of putting it together on Dueling Networks so that I could show you guys. So I'm just going to be offering a few, musings about card choices, ratio choices. Speaking of ratio choices, let's start off with the monsters. 9 monsters in total, which kind of harkens back to the day where Hero Beat was how you ran heroes, with 3 Neos Alias and Stratos and 2 Thunder King, and then maybe 2 Veilers if you were feeling a little saucy. And that was basically all you had to run. But nowadays, this 9 monster count is really surprising when you take into account the monsters that he is running at 2. So 2 Bubblemen and 2 Goblinberg is particularly surprising because Bubbleman is the only card that you can search with Shadow Mist's secondary effect. His effect is search a hero monster. The only card you're going to be able to search is the Bubbleman. And most people, when they do the Shadow Mist play, you use a way to special summon it, such as a Hero Lives or Goblinberg. You use either of these cards to get your mask change, you set the mask change, and then during your opponent's turn, you activate the mask change to go into Darklaw, rather than doing it on your own turn. And the reason that you do this is so you can get the Shadow Mist effect to search a hero monster off. However, Bubbleman at 2 kind of limits your searches. Once you've searched both, or if you draw into them, you're not going to be able to maximize the utility of Shadow Mist. So it's really interesting that this guy decided to only run 2 Bubbleman, and it's also interesting that he only decided to run 2 Goblinberg, because outside of opening up with the card A Hero Lives, opening up in Goblinberg is the only other way to get the Shadow Mist effect off. It's kind of understandable. I think this guy, he cut the 3rd Bubbleman and the 3rd Goblinberg because he wanted to run more spells and traps, which is interesting because you can look at the ratios. He's running Form Change as a 1-of, which is an interesting card to run. It facilitates OTKs really, really hard. He's also looking at 3 Forbidden Lance and 3 Trap Stun, which is to push the OTKs through. Although I kind of feel like this ends up conflicting each other, because if you want to run a more OTK heavy build with Form Change, running the triple Trap Stun and running the triple Forbidden Lance kind of doesn't make sense if you're only running the 1-of Form Change. Because Form Change and multiple copies of Mask Change are going to facilitate your OTKs most, but he chose to run, only 1 Form Change, and then cards like Mask Charge at 2, which is a card you don't really see very often. So outside of that, Shadow Mist you obviously want to run at 3. It's the core card of the deck. It searches you your Mask Change, which is basically the main card in the deck. It allows you to get out Masked Hero Darklaw, which, as I said before, is a very, very powerful card. One-sided Macrocosmos is basically always going to be good, and punishing searches is always going to be really, really good. So Shadow Mist is a card you should obviously run at 3, but it's the only monster that this guy is running at 3. Moving on to the spells, 3 A Hero Lives makes complete sense when you consider that opening A Hero Lives is pretty good, although it's questionable in a meta where Cosmos are a thing and they can OTK you so easily through 4,000 life points, because you have to pay half your life points to special summon the elemental hero monster. So it again brings up, if you look into his side deck, triple Light Imprisoning Mirror and triple Chivalry, both cards which are pretty anti-Cosmo, and I can kind of understand why this guy decided to side deck in such a fashion, because when you use a Hero Lives, you're going to open yourself up to being OTK'd that much easier by every other deck, at the cost of, you might get your Darklaw into the field. So after the 3, A Hero Lives, 1 copy of Book of Moon. It's a pretty good stun card. It's understandable because it'll let Darklaw get over a lot of monsters that otherwise it wouldn't, because Darklaw only has 2400 attack. Same for Forbidden Lance, although Forbidden Lance also has the utility. It makes it so that your Darklaw summon can't really get stopped by things such as Bottomless or Torrential or even Ring of Destruction if you're playing against a trap-heavy deck. The 1-of copy of Form Change, like I mentioned before, it kind of facilitates OTKs along with multiple copies of Mass Change. And it's really interesting that this guy, he decided to run the Form Change, and he filled his extra deck with 2 copies of Anki, which is something you don't usually see. And then a copy of Masked Hero Dion and Masked Hero Koga, which are also cards you don't usually see. Koga you'll see if you run the 1-of Tect Neos Alias, but outside of that you don't really see it very often. So it's really interesting. He decided to, limit his extra deck space to run 1 copy of Form Change. It's interesting, but I suppose it worked because, the deck did take first place. Mass Change is an obvious 3-of. You want to use that, all the time. You want to go into your Darklaws and your Acids, because those are both really good cards. Mask Charge, usually, I've only seen this as a 1-of in a lot of people's hero decks. It's a +2, it'll net you cards back, it'll let you get back into the game if you've been knocked out of it. But it's interesting that this guy is running 2 Mass Charge and then is not running a Daigusto Emerald in the extra deck. So it kind of seems like you might end up editing back, a Shadow Mist and a Mass Change, but what happened, or even a Bubble Man and a Mass Change, and you're out of Acid, or, something happens to that effect, and you don't really have a way to put extra deck monsters back. But otherwise, Mass Charge is actually a pretty good card. If it didn't have to target both cards, and you had to have both cards in the graveyard, it would be a lot better. Like, if you could add one or the other, or both if you happen to have both, but overall, it's a pretty solid card. It's just something that you don't usually see it too. Raigeki is an obvious choice. Raigeki's a really good card. That's a card that doesn't really need explanation. 3 Reinforcement of the Army. So this is 3 Reinforcement of the Army to 7 targets in the entire deck, which is just, it's really crazy to me. Because, when I started playing, Reinforcement of the Army was at 1, 6 Sams were really good, and Hero Beat was really good because, warrior decks at the time, pretty good. But now Rhoda is at 3, and he's using it to search the 7 targets. Rhoda at 3 is kind of also self-explanatory. You want to be able to get your Goblinberg in order to special summon Shadow Mist. Let's finally move on to the traps. 1-of Bottomless Trap Hole. I think Bottomless, Compulsory, Solemn Warning are all pretty self-explanatory. These are all very strong traps, and there's a reason why they're limited to 1 currently. 1-of Call of the Haunted. Call of the Haunted is actually pretty good in this deck because you can special summon your Shadow Mist, search another change card, and you can also summon back your Masked Hero Darklaw. Or, wait, no. I lied. Cannot be special summoned by other ways. Alright, I lied. You can't bring back Darklaw, but you can bring back your Shadow Mist, and that's a pretty strong play, because you can get a charge card. Do it during your opponent's end phase, and then you put pressure on them, because you can bring out an Anki or a Darklaw. Fiendish Chain at 3 is another really interesting thing because he's also running 3 copies of Trap Stun. So if running 3 of a continuous trap, I think it would have made more sense to run 3 Breakthrough Skill. Although, once again, it makes sense when you consider the power of Cosmos in this meta. So when you use your Hero Lives, you want cards that can stop attack as well as negate effects. So it's just interesting. I just kind of feel like this deck has clashing ideologies where you run 3 Forbidden Lance, 3 Trap Stun, and then 1 Form Change, and also still a very large trap lineup. It's interesting. I can kind of see it as being really unexpected when he flips Trap Stun and, you already have set 5. It's just interesting. 2 of Mirror Force with a 3rd in the side deck is another particularly interesting thing. I want to say again, it's just good against Cosmos. I feel like this guy was really dreading the Cosmo matchup because it would be so easy to get OTK'd when you open up a Hero Lives and you're down at that 4,000 life points. Ring of Destruction, which is also interesting because, again, Hero Lives is going to bring down your life points a whole lot, so you don't really want to bring them lower with a card like Ring of Destruction. I just kind of don't understand why you would run Ring of Destruction in this particular deck, especially since it doesn't require the monster to be sent to the graveyard, so you can't get around it by having Dark Claw in the field, so... It's just interesting to run Ring of Destruction because it kind of conflicts with the Hero Lives. Triple Trap Stun, once again, I guess that he's trying to focus on the OTK potential that the deck has. It really feels like conflicting ideologies. You run these cards that'll prevent your opponent from stopping you, but you also run a bunch of cards that kind of conflict with that. Alright, I'll have to apologize for the jump cut that you just experienced. Dueling Network timed me out for inactivity because I've just been staring at this deck list for like the past 20 minutes. As I was saying, something to the effect of conflicting ideologies. Like, would you rather draw 2 trap stuns and be able to game your opponent, or would you rather draw all of your trap cards and then Dark Claw? It's just kind of confusing. What this guy's aim was. I guess it was to maximize on the ability of the deck to OTK rather than building it suited for OTKing. But I'm not really sure. I can't be 100% certain. And then one of Vanity's Emptiness. I mean, Vanity's with Dark Claw on the field is pretty strong. Dark Claw being, really strong by itself. But then Vanity's just makes it really hard to get over that Dark Claw now. Let's move on to the side deck. Mostly traps in the side deck, as you can see, but triple Space Typhoon. Yeah, most people will agree that you should run in between your main deck and your side deck all 3 copies of Space Typhoon because, generic back row removal. It'll be really good against any deck that runs a lot of back row, such as like Teller Knights, Stop the Call of the Haunted, and the Oasis of Dragon Souls. And then we move on to Triple Chivalry and Triple Light Imprisoning Mirror. These are cards I mentioned before as being anti-Cosmo, as well as, to an extent, the Triple Mind Crush. All 3 of these cards are run at triplicate in this guy's extra deck because you want to stop the Cosmo effects from hitting you because of A Hero Lives. A Hero Lives just leaves you so low on life points, and Cosmos can wipe you out from 4,000 really easily, as compared to having a little bit of difficulty in wiping you out from 8,000. So all 3 of these cards I can see being sided against Cosmos specifically, while Mind Crush is a really good generic side for this format where everything searches, and Light Imprisoning Mirror is also going to be good against Teller Knights, which I can see being a tough matchup because of their ability to rank 4 to get out of Dark Claw. Finally, the third Mirror Force, as I mentioned before. Mirror Force is just a generic good card. It'll help in protecting your Dark Claw. And then finally, we have 2 copies of Royal Command, which is a Shaddoll-specific side card. You want to side it in against Shaddolls because it'll stop all of the regular Shaddoll monster effects. So I'm assuming that's what this guy was siding it for, since no other flip effects are really relevant in this meta. Next we move on to the extra deck. We have 2 copies of Masked Hero Acid. I can imagine one of the reasons why this guy would want to run Triple Trap Stun and Triple Lance is because getting off an Acid when your opponent has, 4 or 5, even 3 back row, being able to let the Acid go through is really strong, and it'll make your opponent go heavy minus. So it's understandable kind of why you would run the Triple Lance, Triple Trap Stun, because getting Acid off is so good. But it also, again, goes back to the conflicting thing where you only run 2 Bubble Man, so why run 2 Acid? You could run 1 and have the same efficiency, but instead he decided to run 2 and limit his extra deck space, which I feel the same way about Masked Hero Anki. The effect is pretty strong. Adding changes from your deck to your hand is pretty good. But again, I don't know if running 2 was the right decision. You generally only need 1 copy of it, and you're only running 1 form change, so you're not going to go into the second very often. I feel like more utility rank 4s, such as, I don't know, maybe Rhapsody and Berserk, or number 101. There are other good rank 4s that you could have included instead of, spending extra deck space on double Anki and double Acid. As well as cards like Masked Hero Dion and Masked Hero Koga, neither of which you would have to run. Instead, you could run more utility rank 4, although these make slightly more sense because, they are good cards on their own. Koga has a very, very strong effect, being able to gain attack based on how many monsters your opponent controls, which can make it a really big beater really fast to get over stuff like even towers if you can get it big enough. That said, though, again, there's only 1 form change in this guy's deck. You can't go into these the Koga and the Dion in any other way. 2 Darklaw is an obvious choice. I've been saying this entire video, Darklaw is just a really, really good monster. One-sided Macrocosmos is always going to be good. I guarantee it's always going to be good. Unless there is an archetype that comes out that pluses every single time you banish something, and I'm not talking about like Ritual Beasts or I don't know, like Yosenju or something like that, where it's whatever if the cards get banished. Nah, I mean something that straight up pluses off of it, like you get your effects when your cards get banished. Otherwise, I think that Darklaw is always going to be good. And then we move on to the utility rank 4s. You have Dweller, which is just generic good. It can also be a 2200 monster if you overlay with a Bubble Man. You have Blade Armor Ninja, which is good for facilitating OTKs, although I am kind of confused as to why this guy would run a copy of Blade Armor Ninja and a copy of Gagaga Samurai. Gagaga Samurai is a generic version of Blade Armor Ninja with 300 less attack, so you're going to end up getting 600 less attack in total, whereas you could just run the one of Blade Armor since you are running a deck full of warriors. I just don't see why you would run Gagaga Samurai as well. It just kind of doesn't make sense. When another monster you control is targeted for an attack while this card is in attack position, that isn't really a particularly useful effect, so I'm just kind of confused as to why you would run both cards when, again, you can run more utility rank 4s. Cast Out the Skyblaster Musketeer is an obvious card. It's a staple rank 4 because its effect is completely ridiculous. Being able to shuffle any face-up card on the field into the deck is very, very strong. Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon is an interesting choice. Like I said, there are other cards you could have run, like number 80 Rhapsody and Berserk, or number 101 Silent Honor Arc. Either of these cards would also have been good in its place, but Dark Rebellion is actually a pretty good monster. Again, I feel like it facilitates OTKs because you're going to get a minimum of 2500 damage if you do happen to get Dark Rebellion's effect off. Evilswarm Exoton Knight, once again, generic, good, staple, rank 4. One of the best rank 4s out there. Being able to do field wipes when you're at a, losing position is really good. The one of Gagaga Samurai, I do not understand it. I don't know why, apparently Blade Armor isn't good enough. I guess you can make both at the same time, but you can also do that with Excalibur, which you should be running anyways, as a tower out in this deck, so it's just really something that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you would run Gagaga Samurai. You could run a lot of other utility rank 4, or, more importantly, something that I know was mentioned in another deck list video featuring this particular deck is Nodin is not featured in this deck. You could have made room for Nodin, which is really, really good when you special summon. It negates the monster's effect that you special summon off of it, but it can help you in making more rank 4s, or which can help get your Shadow Mist back into the graveyard for more monster searches. So I kind of feel like if I were to make any changes to this deck, I would probably just take out the form change entirely, get rid of the monsters that are used specifically for the form change, put in Instant Fusions and Nodin, because those cards are simply too good. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to have to do it for this particular deck list video. I hope you enjoyed this more in-depth coverage of the deck list that won the Los Angeles Regional this past weekend. If you happen to like this video, please give it a like, a comment, and subscribe to the Worldwide Duelists if you're looking for more content like this. This is Ready Opco of the Worldwide Duelists, and remember, guys, you keep the world turning.